Just as we can have a sentence describing an equation, we can have a sentence describing an inequality. Just as the fundamental difference between an equation and an inequality is the verb, so in an equation the verb is equals. In an inequality the verb is one of greater than, less than, greater than or equal, less than or equal. So the difference between a sentence describing an equation and a sentence describing an inequality is also going to be the verb. In an equation, we have, of course, just the verb is by itself. The verb equals, and then all sorts of phrases that can come after is the same as, is equal to, for example. In general, for equality we have a variety of phrases suggesting exactly the same value. What do we have for these other symbols? Say we wanted to describe x is greater than 3 in words. We might say exactly that. X is greater than 3. We might speak less formally and say x is more than 3, or x is bigger than 3. We might say x exceeds 3, x is higher than 3. In specific applications, phrases might include higher, more expensive, or, and this is a little bit odd, either better or worse, depending on whether in the context of the problem large numbers are better or small numbers are better. Alright, what about the opposite? What about less than? What if we wanted to describe the sentence x is less than 3? Well, we might again use exactly that phrase. Other words we might use are things like fewer or smaller. We might say, and this is an odd turn of phrase, x is exceeded by 3. Note the difference between exceeds and is exceeded by. We might say that x is lower than 3. In specific applications, we might say something about being lower or shorter. We might say something about being less expensive. And again, depending on whether large or small numbers are better, this might be better or worse. Okay, so greater than and less than are relatively straightforward. Greater than or equal to and less than or equal to have some odd things happen. If I wanted to describe x is greater than or equal to 3, of course, again, I could use just that sentence. And I could use any of the phrases for greater than with the addition of equal to. So for example, I might say x equals or exceeds 3. The opposite of any phrase for less than. So for example, we could say x is not less than 3, and x is no smaller than 3. And finally, we could say x is at least 3. So x is at least 3, x is greater than or equal to 3, or phrases that derive from greater than by adding in equal, phrases that derive from less than by taking the opposite. In specific applications, We might also talk about a minimum or a bottom. Less than or equal to follows essentially the same pattern. We might say directly, x is less than or equal to 3. We might use any of the phrases for less than, adding in equal. For example, x is 3 or fewer. And again, we can also take the opposite of a phrase for greater than. For example, x is not more than 3, or x does not exceed 3. The counterpart for at least, we might say x is at most 3. And then in specific applications we might talk about the maximum or the top. So let's see how we use these and see how we write down an inequality from a sentence. Let's say that we're told that the sum of a number and 2 is at least 5. So looking at this, the first thing I do is look for a verb. And I see this verb is at the beginning of the phrase is at least. Is at least is one of my phrases meaning greater than or equal to. And so if the sum of a number and 2 is at least 5, I'm going to write a sentence including greater than or equal to. Now I look at my two expressions. My first expression is a sum, so there's going to be addition. The sum of what? Here's the and. Before the and I have a number, and after I have 2. So before the plus sign I'll have x, and after I'll have 2. So this is the sum of a number and 2. Is at least 5. Okay, that part's easy. 5. We get x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 5.